Hi, I'm Adam, and this is Hope Reserved, where we think through Bible theology and worldview. In this episode, we're going to look at Zechariah chapter 6, at the 4 horses and 4 chariots, and the symbolic crowns, and what it all means for us. So the 4 chariots. Now I raised my eyes again and looked, and behold, 4 chariots were going out from between the 2 mountains, and the mountains were bronze mountains. With the first chariot was red horses, with the second chariot black horses, with the third chariot white horses, and with the fourth chariot strong spotted horses. So I responded and said to the angel who was speaking with me, "What are these, my Lord?" And the angel replied to me, "These are the 4 spirits of heaven going out after taking their stand before the Lord of all the earth. With one which the black horses are going out to the north country, and the white ones are going out after them, while the spotted ones are going out to the south country. While the strong ones went out, they were eager to go to patrol the earth. And he said, 'Go patrol the earth.' So they patrolled the earth. Then he called out to me and spoke to me, saying, 'See, those who are going to the land of the north have appeased my wrath in the land of the north.' And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, 'Take an offering from the exiles, from Heldai, Tobijah, and Jedediah, and you shall go the same day and enter the house of Josiah the son of Zephaniah, where they have arrived from Babylon. Also take silver and gold, make an ornate crown, and set it on the head of Joshua the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Then say to him, The Lord of armies says this, Behold, there is a man whose name is Branch, and he will branch out from where he is, and he will build the temple of the Lord. Yes, it is he who will build the temple of the Lord, and he who will bear the majesty and sit and rule on his throne. So he will be a priest on his throne, and the council of peace will be between the 2 offices. Now the crown will become a reminder in the temple of the Lord to Helium, Tobijah, Jedediah, and Hen, the son of Zephaniah. Those who are far away will come and build the temple of the Lord. Then you will know that the Lord of armies has sent me to you, and it will take place if you completely obey the Lord your God." So in verse 6, 1 through 8, this is Zechariah's 8th vision. There are 4 chariots of 4 different colors. The number 4 represents completeness. This is similar to the vision we read about in Zechariah 1, 7 through 17. As we see the 4 different colored horses going out to patrol the earth. In the first case, they reported the nations at peace while Jerusalem was destroyed. This resulted in God's anger at the nations. In this vision, the horses are hauling chariots, and they're going between mountains made of bronze. This likely suggests that the purpose of the chariots is not military conquest, but investigation. It may suggest, rather, that the God of armies is sending them. Verse 5, the angel explained that the 4 chariots are the 4 winds or spirits of heaven. The Hebrew word for wind here is the same as spirit, showing that God is working in every corner of the world. These spirits may indicate that God's Spirit is providing renewal to the Jewish people in exile, to bring them back to the promised land and also back to Him. Verse 6, the chariots travel to the north country, to Babylon, Assyria, and Persia. They also travel to the south, to Egypt. These are the nations that have taken the Jewish people into captivity. Verse 7, God sends the strong horses to go out over the earth and patrol the earth. They help God accomplish His sovereignty in the earth. And then verse 8, the fact that the north country is at peace shows that those who opposed God have been defeated. So this vision kind of looks to a day when all of these major nations that have oppressed the nation of Israel have been defeated and laid waste when Israel is still around. Verse 9, where it says, "The word of the Lord came to me," shows a distinction between the vision received earlier in this chapter and the instructions following this verse. And then verses 9 through 15, they look at the successful rebuilding of the temple. And verse 11, Joshua the high priest is crowned with gold and silver that were brought back from the exiles in Babylon. This shows the part that the exiles returning to the promised land and returning with treasure, which they give to God. This shows with the return to Israel is a return to God. And then verse 12, Joshua was a symbol for the branch, the righteous king that was yet to come. The branch would rebuild the temple. This prophecy has and will be fulfilled in multiple ways. So with God's help, so the first way, with God's help, they did rebuild Zerubbabel's temple. And then later on in the New Testament, Jesus talked about his people being a temple. So when the Holy Spirit would fill God's people, God would be living in them and dwelling with them, just like when God dwelled in the temple in Jerusalem, God was with the people. So in a greater sense, with what Jesus was teaching, that it would be in the followers of Jesus, the believers, that would be a temple. And it also may have further fulfillment when Jesus returns, and it can result in Jesus building a temple where he would rule and reign on earth. So God fulfills prophecy in the most complete way possible. Some prophecies are fulfilled in multiple steps or pieces over time until they reach their complete fulfillment. We see this in recurring patterns. Sometimes it's in kind of symbolic ways, in similar meanings, and the way that it plays out, so it can play out in different stages. So if we only take prophecy one way, if we interpret it completely literally or completely in one period of time, we could miss different ways that God fulfills prophecy. And I believe that God does what he says he's going to do, and he does it in the most complete way possible, or the most complete way that he wants to. So often with prophecy, it often can take different form and in multiple forms to come to its full completion. So for example, Jesus, the prophecies about Jesus coming, some of them, there may have been a near-term fulfillment, like Zechariah and his son that he named Emmanuel, and then a longer-term fulfillment with Jesus being called Emmanuel, meaning God with us. So that kind of shows how prophecy can take different forms and kind of bring a fuller completion to it than if we just look at it in one specific way. So verse 13, in this passage, looks at the dual roles of the branch. He will be a king and a priest. The council of peace will exist between the two offices. Between the two offices, they will bring about peace on earth and peace between God and humanity. So the peace on earth is kind of Jesus' kingly role. So someday he's going to come back and he's going to rule with a rod of iron. So he's going to bring about peace on earth. And that means that all of the human governments are going to be taken over by Jesus and honestly conquered by him. And he will rule it with righteousness and justice instead of the governments we see that are lacking those things. And so we also see peace between God and humanity. So this is kind of Jesus' priestly role. And we kind of see this is kind of the first coming of Jesus, that he kind of began his priestly role, and that will continue, and it continues. So this also points to the two comings of Jesus, once as a priest and once as a king. Verse 14, the crown will remind the people of the people of this prophecy and the future reign of the branch, where it says those who are far off, and shows that this prophecy is only partially fulfilled in the building of Zerubbabel's temple. This temple was already well underway in the time of this prophecy. This again confirms the nature of this prophecy and is one that we'll have to wait for the Messiah before it's fully complete. So what does this all mean for us? What are the main points of this? So this passage shows us that one day God's enemies will be defeated. We see that on the day of the Lord when Jesus returns and becomes king over the whole earth. So right now, we don't see all of God's enemies being defeated. In fact, a lot of God's enemies are leaders and influencers and governments and kings and you name it, over the earth. They have power, they have money, they have influence, and they're often working against God. So we're not living in that day yet. But when Jesus returns is when we're going to see the enemies of God be defeated, and when we see the branch ruling and reigning, Jesus, when he's king over the whole earth. And God will dwell on earth with his people. So we see this kind of in a spiritual sense when Jesus sends the Holy Spirit to believers. So the Holy Spirit lives in us, and God dwells with us. But it's still not fully completed. So that kind of goes with what I was saying about prophecies. They often have multiple pieces that kind of come together to bring the full fulfillment. So when Jesus returns to earth, that's when God lives on earth, and if Jesus is in a temple, so it's kind of brings us that temple imagery of what Israel would have worshipped in. They kind of believed that God was, when they had the temple, God was dwelling in that temple. God was present with them. And then in the New Testament, we have a further fulfillment of it where Jesus sends the Holy Spirit to live inside of us. So now God is inside of us. And then bringing it all together, Jesus is physically present on earth with his people, and he's ruling and reigning according to his will and purpose, which is good and righteous, much different than often what we see today. So the branch will be both a king and a priest. These two roles are seen in Essene literature. So the scrolls that they found at Qumran, they show this Messiah in kind of these two roles, or the two comings. And we also see it in the New Testament and other ancient Jewish sources. So this wasn't a new concept with Jesus. There was even the Essenes, which were in the time frame of Jesus and before, they believed this. We see it here in Zechariah, which is the Old Testament. So this idea that the Messiah would have two comings and two distinct roles, it's not a new concept. And then we see in the New Testament that Jesus shares these roles with his people. We see this in the parable of the talents, where the master entrusts those who are faithful with more, and those who did not invest what was given to him, what they had would be taken away. So that kind of shows us what we're supposed to be doing with everything that God gives us, our skills, our abilities, our resources. We're supposed to be investing it in his kingdom and helping more people come to be a part of his kingdom. So we need to be faithful in telling others about Jesus, praying for others, ministering to others, and living out the priestly role that Jesus has already gave to his people. So we see kind of this these shared responsibilities that Jesus has with his people. He shares them with his people. So right now we kind of have a priestly role, and even ancient Israel was supposed to have kind of this priestly role as well. They were supposed to share the truth about the true God with the nations. But Jesus' disciples were meant to do that too, and bring restoration between God and humanity through Jesus. So we have the message of Jesus that we're sharing. So we are, in a sense, are supposed to be living out, at least in part, helping live out that priestly role that Jesus is. And the Bible talks about he's our intercessor, so he's the great high priest that's in heaven, intercessing between God for us. And we're praying for other people, so we're intercessing for other people here on earth. And then we can look forward to and await the day that Jesus, the branch, or the suffering servant, so these are some different names that we see the Messiah called in Isaiah and Zechariah, takes his throne in Jerusalem. He becomes king over the whole earth. And I think that's really what I think people deep down have, this longing for everything to be set right. And unfortunately, we often see it in a worldly sense, that like we try to do it without God, we try to do it our own way, and ultimately that just causes a lot more division and destruction and pain and hurt and evil, quite frankly. But Jesus, who is God, is able to do this perfectly, and he's able to remove all of the wickedness. So we saw that in the last chapter, how God removes wickedness. So basically, God has to remove wickedness and then set up a righteous government where everything would be ruled according to his will and purpose. And that's really where we get the reality that we all long for. It's with God. It's with him ruling over our lives. It's with him ruling over the earth. And that's the longing that we all have in our heart, even though a lot of us mask it or don't realize what it really is. But when Jesus is the Lord of our lives, he reveals to us exactly what his plan is and what our part in the plan is. And we even have a part with his kingly and priestly roles. And when we live out his calling in our lives, then we are, in a sense, sharing that role with him. He shares it with us because he wants to collaborate and work and be intimately involved with his people and with the lives of people on the earth. And that's really one of the big roles and callings of the church, of God's people. So hope you've enjoyed Zechariah chapter 6. It's an interesting chapter, and I just wanted to thank you for listening.